Hello and welcome to season two, episode one of the My Life in Rugby interview series. And we kickstart 2024 in a big way. But on the field and off, our opening guest is a widely adored legend who had a 2023 to remember from fatherhood to provincial and international honours. It's fair to say Jean Kleyn had 12 months that will live long in the memory. So without any further ado, welcome to the show, Munster cult hero, honorary Castle Troy man, Jean Kleyn. Thanks for coming on, mate.
Thanks, Kayla. Appreciate it. I'll have you know, I actually live in Anacotti. It's a very fine
Oh,
border, but
jeez. I think we might need to start all over again in case people in Adequate hear that now.
no, you're grand. You're grand.
We'll start with the major news this week, which is the knee injury and the eye injury. So, firstly, how are they keeping for you?
It's one of those things when the eye's getting better, which is great, and the knee, it is what it is. You know, you can only kick the can down the line so many times before it eventually bites you. So, yeah, just had to go and have it cleaned up, and yeah, I'll be all set for next season. Well, hopefully I'll catch the tail end of this season still,
Yeah,
um, get a few games in, and then yeah, set myself up nicely to get ready for next season.
yeah, hopefully, and come back flying.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
listen,
Yeah,
there's been a lot of injuries in the HVC this last couple of weeks. So,
it's
any
been
positive
a rough
news?
run. Yeah, it's been a
Exactly.
rough run for Munster. Yeah.
We'll start with 2023. We'll work back to the start in a few minutes, but like as calendar years go on the field and off, as I mentioned, it really wasn't a bad one.
Yeah, no, look, a year full of highlights. It's a tough one because I don't think you ever go into a year with expectations. You know, you sort of start the 1st of January and you go, I'm going to make the best of what comes. And yeah, I just had some really good things come across my path. Obviously, I knew I was going to have a child, which was great. He's fantastic. He's almost a year old now. He's 11 months and like 7 days or 8 days or something. So first birthday party is coming up on the 4th of February. That was class. And then obviously the URC with Munster, that was a great experience. I sort of thought I was at the pinnacle of rugby when that happened. It was like, what a trip, and it's been a fantastic journey. And I mean, we were against odds going into it, and the entire build up to it. Playing I think 7 games away from home in a row and winning all of them, which is unheard of, especially on the lead up to winning the final of the tournament, which was what an experience. So that was great, and then to get the call of Rossi then the next day, it's even better, and for that to lead into what was to be a very successful World Cup, and we got the gold medal in the end, which is literally the pinnacle of rugby. So yeah, I think I went from thinking I was at the top to actually being on top, which is a whole different experience. Yeah.
Absolutely. And like that run for Munster, as you said, was a rush in and of itself. And then you kind of get that phone call the day after the final, as you mentioned. Like there's probably no come down at all. It's literally just you're celebrating 1 minute and then you're celebrating in another minute, and it must be such a rush.
Yeah, no, it took a long while for me to get used to the idea of it. So no, it was a very blessed 23. I can't say it enough. I mean, I was very blessed both on the field and off the field. So no, it was brilliant for me.
Yeah, that's great to hear. We might go back to 2016 just for a minute when you signed for Munster, because I think it's easy to forget you're only young. You're only what, 22, 23 years of age when you
Yeah,
joined Munster.
22 when I came over. So turned 23 actually on my debut game for Munster against Worcester down in Musgrave Park. I remember we played against Donegal.
Oh
Donegal
yeah.
in that match. So he was over for Worcester. So it was I actually turned 23 on that day. So it was a big day for me. And
Yeah.
sure, the only person that knew it was my birthday was Barbara Richardson. I don't know if you've heard of her.
No.
An absolute mad Munster fan, like off her trolley mad, but she's brilliant. We love her to bits, and she's one of the stalwarts of the Munster rugby fan base.
That's
Um,
incredible. And
yeah, so
yeah.
came over 2016, sort of I said I committed. I was gonna move and I was gonna do it because I didn't want to come over and have the mentality of I'm only going to do a few years here and then I'm going to move on, because you wouldn't buy in the right way, I don't think. So I came over hoping to do a long stint. I signed my second contract for Munster, I think, towards the end of my second year of my 3-year contract. So I mean, I was signed up for 6 years before I'd even gotten to my third year's contract. So that was a big thing for me. I think I was quite committed to Munster by that time, and it's a kind of place that sort of swallows you, in a good way, because like you show up and you sort of don't expect a whole lot from Limerick, and Limerick's a fantastic place to live. It's a crap place for a holiday, but like it's a really nice place to live, and just the people of Ireland and the people of Munster just really draw you in. And yeah, look, I think I never expected it to turn out the way it has, but I was always hopeful that good things would come from it. So, but yeah, no, look, it's crazy to think how far we've come since. I mean, we've come to the end. Well, we're halfway through my 8th year at Munster, so it's a long time.
Yeah, it really is. And like when you're so young going over as well, like I suppose you'd probably have known of like Jean Villiers played for Munster, BJ Botha, etc. And obviously there was a Munster contingent there. Were you in touch with any of them before you came over, or how does that process work?
No, look, I sort of I trusted Rassie and Jacques because I'd worked with them before. So when Rassie, invited me to come play, I sort of said, look, it's a great opportunity, and fairness to him, he wouldn't bring me to a shit place, and I knew of Munster's history, and I knew CJ was here at least, so I'd have at least one guy who could speak my language who would help me sort of get into it. But no, I came over in a very positive sense. I thought it would be a good place for me to further my career.
I, I yeah, I
Yeah,
was good. I was going to get into Razzie anyway, so might as well do it now because he obviously brought you to Munster and he brought you to
so
2023 World Cup. Like, there's so much written about Razzie Erasmus, but like as a coach and as a person, probably a man manager, what's he like?
he's fantastic. He's the world's best. Like, you don't win 2 World Cups back to back away from home and not be the best. He's an incredible player manager, knows how to communicate with players in a very definite fashion. Yeah, he doesn't beat around the bush either. There's no wrapping things in cotton wool, and you have to be careful of this guy's feelings or that guy's feelings, because he sees it as, if you're in a meeting room, it's like you're on the pitch. Like, if you want to call someone out, you got to call them out. So it's very open doors with him. He's, like I said, he's exceptionally good at managing players, and knowing when to give and when to take, and he places a lot of trust in his players as well, which is reflected in the trust in him. So yeah, he's incredibly good at what he does. But I mean, that being said, he has a great team behind him. I mean, you can't even say behind him. Great team next to him. They work so closely together. That you couldn't say they were standing behind him. But yeah, Jacques, Felix, Don Human, Dion, like Sticks, you can name all of them. And then Andy, the conditioning coach, we've got Renee and Andy, the physios. The team he's assembled is exceptional in terms of the management team, and then the team he's assembled in terms of players is also, you'd struggle to find a better collection of lads, not just in terms of actual talent and mindset, but in terms of just being good lads.
And that buy-in was evident. Like we did comprehensive coverage of the World Cup on this channel, and the one thing we always spoke about is you don't win 3-1 score games in a row with it by chance. It comes from within. It comes from the intangibles, and like that final in particular, it comes down to a last minute maul, which I know you were one of the ones in there trying to get it down, and like it's that fight. And I suppose there's probably great buy-in, not just behind Razzie, but as you said, as a collective, the squad, the playing staff. And I know you had your family over, which probably helps as well for that kind of the culture at a World Cup.
Yeah, absolutely. I think having the families over was an absolute winner for us because you can only spend so much time away from your family before you start missing them, before you start missing normality, and it does affect you mentally. So having them with us, even just to be with us, not necessarily perform any necessary action, but just their presence was a massive buffer for us. It's a way of getting away from we're at a World Cup. It's a way of getting away from we're under a lot of pressure. It's more. This is just normal life. I'm with my family. So that's fantastic. And then the way the families mingle as well, it's incredible. Like credit to all the wives, how they how they drew my wife in, being the only Irish woman, really the only foreigner out of the group. So yeah, no, look, there's massive buy-in from all the players and all the families. So everything helps. It all works together to create this environment.
Absolutely. And culture is a big thing. I spoke about this with your former teammate, Alex McHenry. That podcast comes out next week. But like Johan, he's said at Munster and he says it at Bath about, the culture of the club. Wig is absolutely huge in it in every interview. I just want to touch on them as well, because obviously under Johan, you kind of kicked on and obviously won your Ireland caps, and under Graham, obviously you won a URC, but again, further form followed and further progress. What kind of impact have they had in your career, but also what were they like to work under?
Um, I mean, they were both fantastic to work under. Worked under Johan for I think 2.5, 3 years, might have been more. I actually can't even recall. There was so many changes of coaches and stuff at the start. I sort of struggled to remember when he started and when Rassi and Jacques left. But no, Johan's a fantastic guy. He's a great coach. Yeah, like, can't praise him more. I think you can see it in the results he's getting at Bath as well, from a team that was bottom of the log when he arrived there, to now winning big matches by big margins as well. So no, look, all credit to him. And then you've got Graham as well, completely different character. I think Johan's quite reserved, whereas Graham is, he's your classic rugby player. He's boisterous. He's out there. He's really good. He's a really good personality for rugby, if I could put it that way. So no, I think it's very much the faith they had in me, and the belief they had in my abilities, which is a strange thing, because as a player, sometimes you don't have the belief in your own abilities, where people have that belief in you. And it's the small things. Like I remember years ago, man, this would have been my first or my second year. Jerry Flannery was still the forwards coach, and he just said to me, "Man, you have to know like how much it, sort of motivates the lads to know that you're on the pitch with them, because they know like there's a real physical force there, and you're gonna, make a big difference in the scrum, and you're gonna make a big difference in the maul, and it's all those kinds of things that the quiet words and the handshakes and stuff. I think they make quite a big difference, and I think as a coach, it's a very fine line to tread between friendship and being a coach, because at the end of the day, your coach is your boss, so they have to be able to have a stern word with you, but they also, because of the way rugby is, it's a very family orientated friend environment. So I think both of those lads are incredible at treading that line. both in their own very unique ways.
Yeah. And you mentioned there just kind of these lads having belief in you, and obviously that's very important. And I suppose, like I touched on leadership before in other podcasts with other players, and does that belief help the leadership, and bringing that out to yourself, for instance, because obviously as an experienced player, it's sometimes expected, but like if you, how do I phrase it? I suppose if the coaches don't back you to be kind of a main voice in the pitch, it's hard to do it, I suppose.
Yeah, I suppose so. But I think it's more like it's a fairly natural thing. Like it either happens or it doesn't happen. I mean, there's certain guys that don't take the lead and aren't as vocal. They lead by actions, and then there's other guys who are very vocal. And not saying that they don't lead by actions, but there's different forms of leadership on the pitch, and I think with rugby, there's so many strong personalities that it takes a while for you, especially as a young player, to sort of define your own role in that fold. And I think as time develops, it changes. I never saw myself as a very vocal, on pitch personality in that sense. But in the last couple of years, it's sort of gotten a little bit more of a responsibility for myself, because I am ticking on and I'm getting a little bit older and a little bit more experienced, if you could say it that way. But yeah, I think that's sort of a natural development. You'll find there'd be players with 200 caps that don't say much, and then you'll find there's guys who have 10 caps that have a really active role to play.
Absolutely. And I suppose anyone who has subscribed to Access Munster last year would see the kind of balance, as you said. Like there is younger players who are so vocal, there's older players who kind of, they might say two words, and two words enough then as well. And it's probably all about balance, I suppose. It's kind of where you're getting at. We have to discuss 2023 because it's kind of the main point of this. It's a positive podcast for this one anyway. But
Absolutely.
Munster did get off to a rocky start last year. It wasn't great. But like the early stages of the last season with a new coach and staff trying to bed in new ideas, what was it like? Like Graham always says there was always full belief. That must have been so crucial when results weren't going your way.
Well, that's exactly what it was. It was we all they laid out a plan for us at the start of the season, and they said this is the plan, and this is the way we're going to play, and this is what we're going to do. And like we're all professional players, we all knew it was going to take take a while for everything to take shape. Like you don't change an entire playing style within a team and expect it to be, just a magic wave the wand, and then next week we're all of a sudden this brilliant team. Not that we weren't a good team to start with, but that transition, you're going from one defensive system to another defensive system. You're going from one attack system to another attack system. And, in that sense, it does get quite difficult to make that transition quick, because there's a serious learning curve to that. And I mean, you have coaches that have never worked with players that have never worked with certain coaches, and the relationship building there as well is crucial, because as with anything, the better your understanding is of the players you're working with or of the coaches you're working with, the more you're able to perform and deliver what they want and what they expect. And I think that's what it was for us. Like they laid out the plan, and we just said, look, we're going to keep knocking at the door, and eventually it will break down. So we hit a point sort of midway through the season where I think we really started kicking on, and we started to gain a little bit of momentum. Unfortunately, by that time, we'd already done ourselves enough disfavors to end up playing our last 7 games away from home. But I mean, regardless of that, we still had the belief, and we still had had our adapted playing style that we now were using, and I think we use it to really good effect.
Yeah. If you don't mind me asking, like obviously the November internationals, the way it happens. Like the coaches get a full month with players or 3 weeks with players there, and obviously you had the South Africa game, and I know you didn't feature in that one, but the build up to that, could you feel that was when progress started happening, when you had that block to kind of just iron a lot of things out? Because it did feel like that performance, as well as being a great performance, it was a sign of, okay, now they've just ironed out the creases in the makeup of the side.
Yeah, I think very much so. I mean, obviously, it helped the fact that the lads had to travel halfway across the world 3 days before the match. So that obviously helped a little bit. But I mean, it was what an event as well. I think it was just the occasion, accompanied with, I think, the weather. It suited us down to the ground. It was one of those down and dirty, wet. The weather was terrible. I don't know if you were at the match, but it was
No.
absolutely torrential. But long story short, I just think it was the perfect storm for us in that sense. That it was the culmination of everything we'd worked towards over the last, say, 3-4 months, and a great time to put it on display. And that's what we did. And I mean, all credit to the lads. I obviously didn't play that match, but all credit to the lads that put on some performance. Great game to watch, and I think we were all absolutely enthralled, sitting on the sidelines, and we were all ecstatic with the result. So I think that really kicked us on. I think you're right.
That's great to hear. Now, I could go game by game through the season, but we will be here. We will be here all day, and
I don't
there was a
remember
lot of games. Yeah, that's the thing. There was a lot of games last year, but like you did have great form, and you subsequently won Player of the Year. And I have a question from Munster fan Garrod on the topic of your form and everything. Like he just wants to know, what do you kind of learn in the period of not just like 2019 to 2023, but across the year, that kind of helps you improve? Is there kind of an element of new coaching ideas or new experiences, or just age, or how does that? Because obviously last year was a phenomenal year on a personal level for you and your form.
Do you know what? I think it's a combination of factors. Obviously, the new playing style suited me. I think the coaching staff looked after me really well in terms of training load and stuff, considering I was playing every match. There was a really fine balance struck. A fella like Jed McNamara doesn't probably um, get enough credit for that. He kept me working for the entire season, him and obviously the entire medical staff. So that's a big thing, is just being available to play and being physically able to play week in, week out. I think a run of games always increases your form, and I had a fairly long run of games. So the more, in my mind, the more rugby you play, the better you play. Just from a sense that it's always at the start of the season, you have to consciously make decisions on the field. It's like the ball goes there. What do I do? Kind of, you have to make the decision. Whereas by game 4, 5, 6, you're not making the decision anymore. It's just happening. And the more games you play, the faster that subconscious decision happens. So I think it all adds, and I think it just makes you a better rugby player. The more you play, it's always difficult for guys then in the reverse that haven't played a lot of rugby to come in and put a really good performance in, because of the fact that you haven't played a lot of rugby. So it's a difficult one, in that regard for coaches. But no, like I said, I had an incredible run, and in terms of learnings from 2019 to 2023, my main learning was just stick to the inside noise. Like, doesn't matter what people on the outside say. It doesn't matter what the media writes about you, because the media will write anything to sell a paper or get a click. It's literally, I mean, it happens all the time. You have guys, ex-rugby players, saying all kinds of stuff just to stay relevant, and that, unfortunately, that's the reality of media. And you have journalists publishing all kinds of crap just to get a click. And I mean, they don't care about how that affects you mentally, or, you know, what happens to you or your family in regards to that from a mental aspect. So the best thing is to just ignore it and not read it at all, which is what I did. I think I spent too much time reading what other people thought about me leading up to the 2019 World Cup, because it was all positive, and then at some point it just wasn't anymore. And then, you know, you believe the positive stuff, so you inevitably believe the negative stuff as well.
Yeah.
And I think when I just stopped caring about what other people thought and just said, look, I'm playing rugby for myself and for my family and for my club and for my friends, and I enjoy doing it, so that I'm going to keep doing it, and no matter what the outside world says. So that was the biggest turning point for me in terms of my actual mental attitude towards rugby.
I'll probably drop in there. You did an interview with Jeff Neville of the Loosehead podcast 2 or 3 years ago. Brilliant, about 2019. And I do recommend anyone, Jeff has been on this podcast as well, anyone who hasn't listened to it to do, because it's brilliant from yourself, but Jeff definitely got a lot out of it as well in 2019, the World Cup, and obviously 2023 went a bit better. But you did mention there, to get back on topic, you mentioned a run of games. I think you said, and getting all that. Like, when you got your 3 knockout away wins, unbeaten in your trip to South Africa, it's easy to say, oh, the run of games are important, but there was so many chopping and changing with injuries as well. Like, how much of that comes down to a bit of confidence as well and belief in the next man? Because, like, you went into the Leinster semi-final with 5 starters out from what the Glasgow game was. Like, run of games is great, but that's lucky by this year's standards, I think we could say, but a bit unlucky as well.
That's their standard. No, I think, as you said, it's next man up, and that's been the mentality at Munster for years. And although it's been the mentality, I think last year was sort of the point where we reached where the next man up was good enough to be the next man up, if that makes any sense. Not disparaging any of the previous players or, you know, any of the previous squads, but I think just the point of experience and talent we hit last year was the point where we could go, okay, well, next man up is actually next man up. You know, it's not, oh shit, we have to put the next fella in. It's, okay, great, next fella gets a shot. And I think that was the big thing, is we had belief in the system and we had faith in the entire squad. There was never a guy brought into the lineup that was like, you know what, I don't know if he's going to be able to do the job. You know, it's always been grand. This fella gets his shot now. Hopefully he takes it, kind of thing.
That's, as you said, like, if you have belief in the next man, that's obviously so important. Like, in that Leinster game is probably the one that I always looked at, just in terms of analysing Munster, because obviously, you know, Orgus Neyman, Peter Mann, he was playing on one arm. Tyke Byrne was only just back. No Fekitoa, no Calvin Nash, no Conor Murray. And yet the lads who replaced them, you know, the likes of Craig Casey, I know Finian Wycherley came off the bench and played really well. Peter was replaced by Alex Kendellen, who was brilliant off the bench. And like, that's how you win things, I suppose, ultimately, not just beating Leinster, which I know you mentioned in one of the pre-Stormers press conferences, but if you're going to go on and win, it's so important that those lads, when someone like Peter Manny comes off, that someone is just going to come on and, quite literally in Alex Kendellen's case, bump the next lad aside in a very important moment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, like I said, I mean, I think we have the squad and we have the depth. Unfortunately, our depth is properly being plumbed at the moment. So, look, we have a good few lads coming back now over the next couple of weeks. So hopefully we'll start seeing some results.
We will. It's there is a certain someone who's counting this on Twitter, but it is over 200 days since the win in Cape Town to win the final. It is myself that's counting, in case anyone didn't know. But my abiding memory of yourself is that pre-game press conference, which I mentioned, which was really, I think that's when the belief kicked into the likes of myself as well, because you're hearing that and it's very confident, but also like the Access Munster clips from the sideline and, you know, the clear leadership and all that. But can you just talk us through, for people who may not remember it as well, the week, the game, like, because it's going down to South Africa for a final is not something you'd be too used to either.
We were almost lucky in the regard that it was our third trip down to South Africa of the season. Because we had the European Cup round of 16 against the Sharks that went obviously very poorly, and then we had our regular season tour down to South Africa, which was Stormers in Cape Town, which we beat them, and then the Sharks over in Durban, which we tied. And I think in that regard, we took a lot of faith out of it. We also, I mean, we now have a 5-0 record against the Stormers, or 4-0, 5-0. And,
Yes.
Going into the game, we knew they had to overcome beating us. Like, it's not we're coming here against all odds, one man on his own kind of thing. It was a look, they still have to get over the mental block of actually beating us, because they never have. That was a big thing. For myself personally, and I think for a lot of the lads in the team, like, we knew that we'd trumped them a few times and they'd never gotten the best of us. So going into that week, we were confident. We were like, this is our year to do it. We can do this. We have full belief. We have full faith. We've got the team. All we need to do is execute the plan. And in fairness, we did. We went down and we executed the plan. So just from that regard, I think it was a big week, but it was just another week for us by that stage, because I mean, it was the 7th of our consecutive games away from home. So yeah, it was just another week.
You draw much belief then from the fact that, like, obviously you've beaten the Stormers away from home. You've beaten them every matchup that you've played the Stormers so far. You've beaten them, I think is the best way of putting it. You came back from behind against the Sharks. You beat Glasgow, ended their unbeaten run as well as the Stormers and Leinster. Like, is that something that there's belief there, but do you have to speak about it, or is it just kind of like, what you've done and you can kind of just, it goes without saying in some ways?
No, I'd say it was mentioned. It wasn't something we harped on about. It wasn't an active topic of conversation, but it was definitely mentioned. Just to sort of realize what you've done, kind of thing, and draw belief from it. And then that was the end of it. There was no droning into us every day that, yeah, no, you've done this, you've done that, you've done that. It was mentioned, and then we all knew.
The game itself then, like, obviously hugely physical, hugely nip and tuck game. You were behind from, there's something like 25 minutes of the last half hour before John Hodnett's try. Being on the field, could you sense the momentum kind of coming back into your favour in the last kind of half an hour, as you kind of, because I know there was a few defensive stops, obviously two disallowed tries in the first half, I believe. Like, could you feel that you had all the momentum and as when you needed it most, I suppose?
Yeah, I don't really think it was that. It was just we knew we were going to win. It's just a confidence thing, a belief. I mean, I don't know how many times I've said belief in this interview, and how many times Wig has said belief, and how many times belief has been mentioned. But I think we just had a honest belief that we would win, and that's what pulled us through. I think it was just, we knew if we just kept executing the plan, we'd come out on top.
You did ultimately, and it was incredible. I think it goes without saying, of course. Like, to do it as well, because I think it's important to mention, to do it for the likes of Keith Earls, that was his last game in red, and Ben Healy, Malachi Fekitoa departed, Peter O'Mahony, Conor Murray, Stephen Archer at the end of their careers. And I know Pete spoke very well after the game about it. That must be like, how does that come across in camp? Do you talk about that as well after the fact, that like you've done something special for, in the case of Keith Earls, who was last Munster game, someone who was Mr. Munster?
No, because we were all on the piss.
That's fair.
There's no time to mention what you've done. Like, it's just everyone's celebrating. It was just, it's sort of, I think the anticipation of it is much worse than the actual event of it.
Yeah.
So once we'd won, it was just, everyone was just happy, having a good time, having a few beers. It was good. Yeah.
I mean, no better way to celebrate, of course, as well. And like we get on South Africa now because obviously winning the URC is great. Winning the World Cup is, I'm not going to say it's better from a personal point of view, but like it's right up there as well.
Now it's better.
I wouldn't have much experience in the matter, as you might know, but like I might just get back to kind of the call up, and obviously Razzie gave you the call the day after, as if you didn't have enough things on your mind, and it's straight into camp. You won your first cap in July against Australia. Did it take long to kind of get to grips with the South African style or systems? Because obviously this is a team who won the previous World Cup. They've been uber consistent. They won the Lions series. It's not like the Barbarians where everyone's coming in the same footing. Like,
You know what? It actually wasn't, because a lot of the systems that they implement are systems that Munster still use from Rassie and Jacques' days when they instilled it here. So the transition was actually fairly easy, in terms of just general play. Obviously, it took me a while to get terms with all the line-out calls and all the different calls they had, but in terms of systems, I found that quite easy, really. And then in terms of slotting into the team, obviously being South African, it came fairly easy to me to play in the South African team. So that it was the easiest transition I've had from one team into another.
obviously, it showed like your form continued. As we know, and you got into the World Cup squad, but that between that first cap making the World Cup squad, they're obviously huge memories as a South African.
Yeah,
Like, I'm not obviously going to ask you to compare to the Ireland situation, but like from a being down in South Africa, making your test debut in South Africa, the World Cup squad is announced, on TV. It's a huge event. It's really cool the way they did it.
yeah, it's cool. Yeah,
Like,
more time play.
yeah, and for your family then, like to be down there and watching that, it probably ties into that again, the fact that they're so close by when these things happen as well.
Yeah, no, it means a lot. It means a lot to have them with you when these things happen. So no, look, it was it was an unexpected journey, but it was brilliant from start to finish. I have no regrets. If you asked me tomorrow would I do it again, I'd say yes in a heartbeat. So no, I enjoyed every minute. Well, not every minute. There was obviously some tough stuff, some difficult decisions to be made and stuff, but overarchingly, what an incredible experience.
As you can imagine. And like you played two of the pool games, the Ireland one, which obviously for Ireland fans that was as good as it got, unfortunately, and the Romania game as well. That Ireland game at the pool coming into it was kind of billed as the two best teams in the tournament potentially.
Yeah,
Obviously, you can't be listening to that, otherwise you'd never win it. You'd never go that far. But like, what was it like in South Africa? Because obviously you lost a big game, but like it happened in 2019 as well. Was that touched upon the fact that like, yeah, we lost a pool game? Who cares?
we actually planned for it.
Really?
Yeah, we were like, we don't really. The result of the Ireland game had no bearing on our campaign. In terms of, we knew if we beat Scotland,
Hmm.
then all we'd have to do is get the points against Romania, get the points against Tonga, and we'd be in a quarterfinal. So after that first game, after we beat Scotland, we sort of said the Ireland game doesn't matter. It was obviously we would have liked to win it. It would have been great for us to win it. But in terms of our campaign, we didn't put it down as one of the markers in order to win the tournament. We weren't like, we have to beat Ireland if we want to win this World Cup. It was more of a, oh yeah, it'd be nice to have, but we didn't mind if we finished first or second in the pool, because we knew the route forward. Then we knew we could beat every team if it came to playoff rugby. So in the great scheme of things, the Ireland match was more of a point of pride. We would have liked to win it, but I mean, sure, we have the rematch now coming in July, so we'll see who comes out there. But yeah, sure, as I've been reminded by many Irish folk, picture winning the World Cup, but you lost to Ireland. You know what I mean?
I mean, even I would look at it the other way around. Like I'd lose 2 pool games and get out of the pool and win the World Cup if needs be. Like even if it means lose to Scotland, feck it. Like it's but
But that was
that,
our mentality. Was we just said we needed to win the games we needed to win, which was Scotland, the quarterfinal, the semi-final, and the final. That was the
yeah,
big one.
and that quarter-final against France, semi-final against England, and final against New Zealand. We mentioned it earlier, like 1 point victories. That French game, I know you didn't feature, but like that was, in my opinion, probably the game of the tournament.
Do you know what I'd say the Irish match versus New Zealand was also up there. That was to me also one of the best matches of the tournament. Just absolutely brilliant. But yeah, I'd say those two matches, and then obviously the final. I'd say they'd be top three.
And like that, obviously, doesn't really matter how good a game is if as long as you win. That French game, they probably kind of it was a different game to what everyone was expecting. There was a lot of talk of like, oh, the kicking game is going to be so important, and it was, but like it was so open, so fast. Again, is that one of the things you plan for when you're taking on France? Are you just thinking we'll beat them whatever way comes up because
Yeah,
frankly they're an unbelievable side. Like
yeah. We were, to be honest, we were more focused on like overcoming obstacles like the crowd because the French crowd was immensely behind France, obviously, as you would be, but very vocal, very loud. Um, you know, very easy to boo a bad decision. And I mean, when there's 80,000 people booing you, I don't care what your name is and who the ref is. It does affect you. So those were the kinds of things that we sort of mentally prepared for. From the rugby side, it was just getting ready for another game against France.
does the does the Marseille game a year previous or 2 years previous, I don't know which, does that kind of come into the thoughts then? Because obviously Marseille is an unbelievable venue as well, incredibly hostile.
Very
But
nice one.
like again, really nip and tuck game against France. Are you kind of drawn at that and kind of just saying, well, it is essentially a kick for ball. We know we can't beat them.
Yeah, that's essentially what we said. We knew we could beat them, so all we needed to do was go out and do it.
It's,
So
it's yeah.
that's that's what it all boiled down to in the World Cup. Is we knew we had the ability, we knew we had the players, and we knew we had the more mental fortitude. All we needed to do was get out in there and do it. And at the end of the day, that was the difference. We just, I mean, at half time against England, it was just a case of like just lift your heads and play rugby because we know what we need to do to win this.
It strikes me as being an incredibly mentally strong place to be. Like obviously you spent what 2-3 months together, and obviously it's a World Cup semi final. You're going to be excited, but it's such a strong headspace to be in, I'd say. And even like by the time the final comes around, the fact that you can say, well, we beat the French in France, we beat England from a deficit. Like, what's
Yeah,
next?
and I mean, obviously, the fact that we'd had a really good victory against New Zealand, a record-breaking victory against New Zealand in Twickenham, just leading up to the World Cup, was obviously a massive thing for us as well. As just a sort of mental like note, like just was just pinned, just we had beat them very recently, so we could do it again. We had faith in the fact that we could do it again.
And that final, like it was incredibly physical. It was an incredible game, as you mentioned yourself. It was absolutely unbelievable. When you're sitting on the bench waiting to come on, you come on the last 10, 15, 20 minutes. Are you kind of, I just want to tap into your mindset here. Are you kind of thinking of, well, I can see New Zealand doing this or that, and just kind of analyzing the game and seeing what you can do when you come on? Because
Yeah,
obviously second row, it's not the same as 10. You're not asked to marshal the troops, but it is still, you have a job to do. Are you kind of watching how the game is unfolding the whole time?
all the time. I think there was a big onus placed on players as well to look for strategies or defensive weaknesses and stuff, which I think, in fairness, everyone did. And yeah, it was something you do constantly. You just do it naturally. Like you sit there and you're watching the game and you're just seeing, they're going up at this place in the line out. Generally, they're trying to maul around the front or around the back, or you pick up on cues and then you just know. I mean, I was sitting next to RG for the entire thing, so we were sort of plotting between the two of us as well in terms of what we could do to get that margin, that 1%. And yeah, the scrum ended up being where the game was won, which was, I mean, the case a couple of times in the last few years for South Africa.
You must be incredibly set piece focused. I know a lot is said about the scrum. Obviously, the scrum is a magnificent art form, and anyone who says otherwise is wrong. But like the maul, even your maul defense was fantastic and was crucial in that game. Is there like there's kind of a trope that like South African forwards and set piece they're good at it, but like the coaching that you have on your set piece and under Shaq and Razzie's stewardship must be top notch as well. Like,
yeah, no, we put a lot of time into our set piece. We've got Dion Davids as our line-out coach, and we've got Don Human as our scrum coach, and they both put a lot of time into analysis of opposition and both into execution, on the pitch and on the training field.
It paid off. World Cup champion. I don't think there's enough adjectives to probably describe what it feels like when the final whistle goes, and it's adulation and it's an incredible moment. And I think, I spoke about this with Munster fans before, but I think a lot of us were as nervous as if Ireland were in the final because there was two of our own lads out there, and it's there is that connection, and it's incredible.
Yeah, got a lot of after Ireland fell out that we were now the official team of Munster.
I was gonna say because I was one of them. Yeah, like I was one of the messages. I was going to touch on that because like it did feel like that official team, almost our unofficial team, and it was great to get it done. And just before we move off it, like you're late 20s now, to get that World Cup winners medal and everything that comes with it. But after the last few years that you've had, with Munster, and there was defeated finals, lost a penalty shootout to Toulouse, there was the World Cup with Ireland. Is there an extra bit of sweetness, the fact that it wasn't plain sailing? Like, no disrespect to the likes of Kane Moody or someone like that, but he's 20. He hasn't gone through as much heartbreak as you have.
He's probably going to be the best rugby player we've seen in a few decades. He's class. But regardless of that, yeah, I think so. Probably. I wouldn't be able to tell you because I haven't experienced it from the other side. Do you know what I mean?
Okay,
I haven't. I never won something easily. It's always been the difficult road. Except I suppose we won the Currie Cup in 2014 with the Stormers, or with Western Province, and we went unbeaten on our run to winning the trophy. But that was probably the only other real experience I had. But no, I think, yeah, I couldn't be. I couldn't tell you. Like I said, that's my frame of reference.
Yeah, that's fair enough as well. Before we wrap up, I should ask about your future because, okay, you can't predict the future. We have signed a 2-year extension at Munster, and I think that went down pretty well. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah.
Do you see yourself staying in Limerick longer? Like, is it Munster? Is it Limerick? Like, what is it that just has you kind of wanting to stay so badly?
Well, my wife's Irish, so that's a fairly big point. But no, look, I love Munster and I love the club and I love the people. I love what it represents and the passion that people have for it. I think it's a great club to play for. And having the chance to play for them and not just play for them for a short while, but I mean, by the end of it, it'll be a decade. I've played a decade worth of Munster rugby, so yeah, I think it's unreal. And I don't know. I'd probably stay as long as they'd have me, to be honest with you. But I'd say in a couple of years' time, it'll probably be out with the old and in with the new kind of mentality. I'll be 32 at the end of my next contract, so they'll probably be looking to put the younger fellas who've worked their way up and worked their way through into that top spot. And fair play to them. I think I've been there long enough now. Well, not now, but by then.
Yeah.
10 years in the number 4 jersey is a long time. So hopefully I'd have left it in a good place.
And even if it'll definitely be left in a good place where you look at the talent coming through. Obviously, Edwin Thomas, Evan O'Connell, Ireland under 20 captain, soon to be announced. Hopefully, like it's incredible. And I might just finish on that because so much is said about Munster winning and the rebuild, but like as a senior player to see this talent coming through, it must be something that stands out to you as well, because they're well lauded by everything I hear.
Yeah, no, look, massive credit to all the development staff for identifying these lads and bringing them up and bringing them through. I mean, like an Edwin comes from Cove, like he played for the Cove Pirates. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like he was playing for Shannon or Cork Con or one of the bigger clubs. So he was found and he was brought through, and I mean, he's a force. Like he's a force, big boy, and he's got the right mindset to play tight head lock, and that's something you don't find as often as you find someone with a physique to play it. I think tight head lock it's more of a mentality than a physique, and he has both. So I think we're going to see big things from him in future. The other lads, Evan and Tom, obviously both a little bit more rangy, a little bit quicker around the park. So I picture both of them playing 5. Well, Tom at the moment, he's doing a fair job at 6. So
he is.
We might just secure himself a place there. But who knows? Yeah. Look, there's a lot left for them in rugby, and it's a long time left for them still. So I think they'll all do well. And I think, yeah, as I said, all credit to the development team for identifying these players. And it's not just Edwin and Evan and Tom. There's loads of other lads, academy players at the moment who are just phenomenal. And it's good to see really good development.
Yeah, absolutely. It's exciting. As much as winning silverware and all that is exciting as well, it's always exciting to see young players coming through, and with the stewardship of the senior players as well, because that's, anyone listens to this knows their rugby and knows how important that is as well. But Jean, that is all we've time for. Thank you very, very much for coming on and for taking the time. It's a brilliant opportunity, and I hope you enjoyed reminiscing about the World Cup and the URC in particular.
As always, thanks, Keylon. Appreciate it, man. Have a good day.
No bother. And I will talk to everyone again next week. Of course, our Six Nations coverage kicking off very soon, but we have a range of interviews from some past and present teammates of Jean coming up, including Alex McHenry and Alex Nankerville in the coming weeks. Got wall-to-wall Six Nations coverage, everything in between. Thanks again to Jean for coming on, and to everyone for listening. And if you like what you see or hear, please do subscribe. So until next time, take it easy.